Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to you all. My name's Chris Borg, Policy Manager at the National Association of Local Councils. It's my pleasure to be chairing today's event on empowering the young councillors of tomorrow. Firstly, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping announcements, some of which are on the slide on the screen in front of you. Do use the Q&A function, which you can see, I think, logoed at the bottom of your screen, throughout the event to post questions to our speakers, and the chat function to interact with your fellow delegates and to share information or links. So just to confirm that the Q&A is a separate Q&A and chat link at the bottom of this type of Zoom called Zoom Webinar, which is the package NALC uses. If you require any technical support, please do post in the chat and my NALC colleague will try her best to help. The closed caption feature, i.e. subtitles, can be accessed by all delegates at any time during today's event. And I'll just give you a couple of bullets. I'll try and jump through these, but it is important because we have had feedback before that some delegates do need to use that. So for desktop and laptop users, to turn on closed captions, please select Show Captions, which is the button labeled CC. If the button is not visible, please select the three dots on the bottom right corner of the screen. Then please select Captions, and after that you'll be prompted to click Show Captions, so please select this option. If you're using a mobile device or tablet, please scroll across the menu to the bottom of your screen and select Captions, and you'll then need to click Show Captions. Once the captions are on, you can access a live transcription of the event. If you have selected the closed caption feature, please use the Reactions feature, which is the button on the right of the closed caption feature, by ticking the Yes button, or the green emoji with a tick, to show us that the closed captions are working at your end. If you're experiencing, as we said, any technical difficulties at all, please contact NALC support via the chat and we'll try and help. After the event, we will send the presentation slides, any presentation slides being used today, the chat and any other information that's useful to you. And we'll also be inviting your feedback on today's event at the end. So please do look out for the feedback form, which will pop up. I think it auto pops up as you're leaving Zoom. So you may think we've forgotten to do it. It hasn't. It's propagated in Zoom and it will only do that once you're trying to leave. It takes about a minute. Please do that. But we can only improve these events if you actually do feed that back in. So please do look out for that, and that will pop up on your screens following the conclusion of the webinar. Just the next slide, please, Liv. Thanks. Just also to briefly thank NALC's partners, Clear, CCLA and Blashier Illuminations, for their extensive support for today's NALC online event. You can see the logo on the screen there. We do hugely thank them for helping us sustain these online events. And next title, please, Liv. Okay, so you can see the slide there with today's expert panel of speakers today. Today's event will show us that recognising that young people shape our future in general, of course, and it's imperative for all local, i.e. parish and town councils, to actively involve them in vital service areas that impact their lives. Moreover, the young individuals engaged by local councils today might, and Deborah might want to talk about this, emerge as tomorrow's local councillors, emphasising the ongoing necessity for such, engagement. Today's event will delve deep into understanding how young people envision the most effective ways to engage politically with local councils, and exploring the reasons behind this engagement and the practical how-tos. Gain first-hand insights today into a local council's successful approach to engaging and politically acquainting its young population with their community. And you'll also gain today a strategic advantage for your local council in effectively involving young people in caring for their community in general, so the flip side of the non-councillor bit. And discover today how to cultivate your interest in becoming, and their interest in becoming, local councils of the future, if not councillors already. Okay, so it now remains for me to be introducing the speaker and say how thrilled I am, and I think NALC generally is, to be joined by such a fantastic panel of speakers. They are Andy Lloyd, Head of Quality and Standards, and Charlie McCarthy, Young Reviewer of Peer Reviews at the National Youth Agency. We're honoured to have them along today. Remy Alokan, who's the social media lead at My Life, My Say, and Deborah Tonkis, who's clerk at Billericay Town Council in Essex. So now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andy to introduce the National Youth Agency slot, and then he'll be followed, I think, briefly, as I understand it, by Charlie. Over to you, Andy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. So good afternoon, everyone. As Chris says, my name's Andy Lloyd. I'm Head of Quality and Standards at the National Youth Agency. As such, I've got a long history of experience in youth work, over 30 years, both in the voluntary sector and managing local authority youth services. National Youth Agency is the professional, statutory and regulatory body for youth work in England. We aim to enable high quality youth work for better outcomes for young people and to strengthen communities. So as such, I'm delighted to be invited to the event promoting successful approaches to engage young people and involve them in decision-making processes. Youth work has such a critical role to play in this. Youth work aims to support young people aged 11-18 to develop their identity and personal and social development, transitioning from adolescence and into adulthood. Absolutely, youth work is a method to engage young counsellors of tomorrow. So what do we do at the NYA for this? We have a participation team, it's small, who provide support for local authorities and organisations to involve young people in decision making. And on our website, you can download our Hereby Right free toolkit kit to self-assess your own participation work. We have taken on the work of the UK Youth Parliament, previously delivered by the recently closed British Youth Council. It's worth saying that we would not have wanted to take on that work. We would have preferred British Youth Council to remain open and continue to deliver in their area of expertise. But given their closure, we are happy to step in to keep UK Youth Parliament going, and we'll work with them to move back to a young people-led charity. However, it's been essential we have done this for exactly today's agenda. This work significantly supports the UK's responsibilities under Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Young people have the right to have their views listened to and considered when decisions are made about them. So if we're going to talk about empowering young people, taking on Article 12, listening and considering their views is a good starting place. I think it's important to highlight that the majority of local authorities have a youth council. However, these are not always representative of all young people and are not capturing every voice of young people, including diverse or marginalised representation. Possibly in addition to the question, how do we empower the young councillors of tomorrow, we also need to ask, how do we enable those future young councillors to be representative of all our communities? At the National Youth Agency, we offer a wide range of support to local authorities and local councils, including our peer review programme and network, through which we have identified models of good practice, including levels of participation with young people through town and parish council funded youth projects and delivered. One such example is South Gloucestershire, who have commissioned open access services with match funding from local budgets. This is not entirely unique to South Gloucestershire, and we are seeing many examples of great work happening with strong local voluntary and community sector youth provision. I believe Shrewsbury Town Council have also recently won a Great Practice Award for their work with young people. What we also see in some places is an absence of a channel or mechanism for those youth workers who are gathering and understanding young people's voice. But what we see is no mechanism for them or indeed young people to be able to directly communicate that voice back to decision makers. Outside of the NYA, personally, I keep myself involved with some local youth work. And last week we engaged through detached youth work, which is freezing at the moment, a group of young people on a local mugger, which is a games area. And those young people spoke about a dead area next to the mugger that could be used for additional play area. So we spoke about how we could fit that into the local youth forum and invited them to come and represent that themselves at the youth forum. So our call at the NYA is to enable and support more of this localised youth work and see youth workers firmly based in communities to capture that interest of young people, the interest of the things that are of concern to them, and evidence to them that they do have a voice and that there are people who will listen and feed back to them. Obviously, I am saying this in the context of all the challenges that local authorities and local councillors have faced over many years now and will continue to face. We are aware of the reduced number of youth workers, particularly professionally qualified youth workers, that we actually have on our streets. But we do believe if we use what resources we do have, then it is youth workers who can engage and capture the voice of young people and empower the young councillors of tomorrow. Before I finish, I will share some positives. Probably most are aware, but on the 12th of November, the Secretary of State made an announcement in relation to youth services, which included several positives for the sector. She spoke about a commitment to develop a co-produced with young people, national youth strategy. This is something we have campaigned for at the MYA, and so really welcome and support. The Secretary referenced the challenges facing young people, and she said talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. She spoke about consulting young people at local, regional, and national level, taking the conversation to towns, villages, and cities. So this is opportunity for you, for us to get local young people involved in that discussion. This will feed into a report, Today's Youth, Tomorrow's Nation, presenting next year to the House a co-produced national youth strategy for the decade ahead. There's also talk of some money and funding, a capital fund, better youth spaces to fund improving existing spaces, as well as dormant asset funding to be dedicated to youth outcomes between now and 2028. So we're not exactly sure how all that will look, but we definitely feel that there are positive sounds for increasing and enabling community and youth voice. I am now going to hand over to Charlie because at the MYA we like to practice what we preach, and through our programs we involve young people in many programs. We have youth consultants. Charlie is involved in the peer review program as a young reviewer, and as such, he's going to talk about his experience in that and decision making. Charlie.
Hello.
Thanks, Andy.
So I'm Charlie. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you, Charlie. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie and I'm a part of the peer review program, and I've been out on a couple of reviews now, and it's the most professional feeling thing I feel I've had been a part of. I feel like I'm involved in the decision making. I get to go hear what these young people are saying and I get to act on it, which is really nice. I get to report it back to these local authorities and councils and get to show like what the young people are saying so that it doesn't get lost out there. Because one of the things that I've heard a lot out on reviews is that we feel we get listened to, but we don't see the results of that. And it's really nice to be a part of that and to try and push the results that these young people want so that they can better access provision and different activities and get involved in their area and you know, like feel like they can make a difference in their area. Yeah, I've seen like you go around. Sorry, give me a second. So I've been to a couple of provisions while out on the reviews, and it's nice because it's very hard to engage, especially my age group, 16, 17. It's very hard to engage that age group and to be able to talk to them and get their opinions on things like just get them involved in their local community. And it's very hard to be able to do that. So with the reviews, it's been nice to go out there, speak to them, and try and see what they want from their community and allow them to feel like they're being listened to.
Mm-hmm. Charlie, you keep talking if you've got anything else to add, and then Andy and or I can ask you any questions and tease anything out more that you want to say.
Yeah, sorry,
that's all right.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost now. It's been a bit, but
Charlie, I think just finish by how that's helped you get involved in some of your local decision making as well.
Oh yeah, okay, 100%. So sorry, my mind went blank for a second. So I was told about the opportunity to join the MYA and the peer review program from my mentor, and from that and from the opportunities that got involved, I got a lot more involved in my community and the youth provisions going on around me. I've been involved in employing youth workers where I'm from, doing interview processes, because again, they like to have a young person speak on who they think would be good for running their provisions. I was in a meeting with with a local authority talking about the youth offer, how our new youth offer and how that can be improved. And things like such as the advertising and things I thought were good practice, such as the detached youth work where I'm from. So I've been involved in various different things in my community that was inspired by working with the NYA and preaching youth work, Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. Andy, did you want to add anything to Charlie's brilliant contribution there?
No, just what Charlie brings is brilliant, and for all the young people involved in the NYA, brings that real lived experience of young people and their expertise as young people as well. So, but thank you very much, everyone.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks both. And just as a kind of segue into Remy in a minute. I mean, I think a few points from this end. One is, as I said before the event started, I don't think NELC has had been plugged into a lot of NYA kind of activity before even the general election. But I mentioned for delegate certification, that basically we had been informed prior to the election, as you say, Andy, that the UK Youth Parliament was going, but actually we've had a previous excellent speaker doing a great job like you've done today, Andy, speaking at last year's NELC Youth Online event from the British Youth Council, which we were saddened as well to hear was going, but then delighted to hear, as you've just told us this morning, that the UK, and as Deborah mentioned to me last week, that the UK Youth Parliament is alive and well, which was news to me, and brilliant news. So well done to NYA for stepping in. In terms of second point, parish and town councils, there's huge potential there, and in my view, it's unrealised potential. I think we'll hear some fantastic stories today from Deborah in terms of engagement with youth from Billericay Town Council, but then also the youth town council there, which is a main mechanism that the larger parish councils use to engage, I think, with young people. But at any level of local government, without plugging young people like Charlie into the process, it's almost a waste of time, because it's just people theoretically doing it in an ivory tower, isn't it? So what you're doing there, Andy, and what Billericay Town Council are doing, we'll hear, is fantastically engaging young people to help shape relevant services with increasingly diminishing resource, which I know where I live in Lewisham is a huge concern. And also, Charlie, my daughter's like 16, 17, so she's like exactly your age, and yes, hard to engage, but also sometimes they don't. That age group, your age group, doesn't feel as though adults want to listen or are interested in those opinions. I said that as a parent, but then also generally, and I think you're absolutely right. Your age group is key, because you're kind of like young adults basically, and have a key. You are the future. You are future of local government and the future of shaping service delivery in communities. And final point, Andy, just to say, brilliant news about Shrewsbury Town Council. I didn't know that, and they're one of our biggest councils as well. So it's great that some funding is getting out there, and that NYA has picked up some brilliant activity that maybe some of our larger councils are doing on this. So maybe that's something we can collaborate further on after today's event. Okay, great. Just to remind everyone that there'll be chances to ask all the panelists questions today. So that will be, in the latter half of the event. I think we are about running to time at the moment. So I'm going to introduce Remy Olokan to you all, who's the social media lead at My Life, My Say, who's a brilliant advocate for what we're talking about today. So over to you, Remy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Remy, social media lead at My Life, My Say. A bit about My Life, My Say for context. We are a charity that is aiming to get young people engaged in democracy up and down the country. We are London-based. Geographically, our office is in Stratford, where I am today, but we do aim to kind of reach all young people across the country. And My Life, My Say was founded by Mete Coban, who's the now Deputy Mayor of London, but who was a councillor in Stoke Newington since 2014. And I think that since then, and because of that, the link between local councils and My Life, My Say and our engagement has always been very strong. So we do events called democracy cafes. We had one last night in London, but we do them across the country where we essentially take over in quotations coffee shops. So we've done it in local coffee shops. We previously did it in Starbucks, but due to things going on currently, we kind of have moved away from that. But we kind of do it in all kinds of coffee shops where we kind of offer young people free coffee and snacks, and then invite them. I mean, that always helps get people through the door. Free food always does that. But yeah, get them in, and then we talk about democracy and like kind of what they want to see the government prioritize, and kind of get them engaged with their local government. So an example I can give. So earlier this year, we did one in Manchester, and we often invite MPs and councillors, and we had John Leach, who is the deputy leader of the Lib Dems in Manchester and a local councillor, and we had him at one of our democracy cafes, and we had about 25 young people there. And I think this is one of the key things in terms of engaging people with local council, is that like having that bridge between generations, um, and having that kind of platform for young people to, for the first time, meet a councillor. I think a lot of people underestimate how young people might not even know about this sort of thing as a like a way for them to actually engage with politics and democracy. I think young people are often only ever seeing stuff on the news, so they're only seeing the really headline politicians, whether that's MPs or prime minister or whatever, but they don't actually know about their local councillors. So having that opportunity to have that face to face with someone who was from the area, and gave them the information on what it took to become a councillor. And that does come with some challenges. I think it's not always going to be plain sailing. At that same Democracy Cafe, there was the room for Q&As and debates, and there were some very tough questions that were asked by the young people to John Leach. And I think that it's one for the councillors or local councils to remember that, like, in order to gauge young people, you do need to have that sense of treating them with the same respect that you would treat adults with, and kind of they're gonna have questions for you, and they might not like the way things are currently are. But if you want to have them on board, then you're gonna have to engage with that, and obviously in a productive manner. But I think as well, when it comes to engaging young people, this year, My Life, My Say, we did a big campaign called the Give and Next campaign for the general election, and the main premise of that campaign was meeting young people where they are. And what that meant for us is that social media, working with brands, influencers, to kind of make sure that young people don't have to go far out of their everyday routine to get this information. I think if you provide too many hoops to jump through, too many links to click, you're going to lose people along the way. And it's just about minimizing that process for young people, so they can get the information and they can get opportunities without having to do too much digging. So I think the success of our campaign, which kind of, I think top line stats were 488,000 people registered to vote via our messaging. I think it's because we did it in a novel way. We kind of used brands like Ben and Jerry's, and gave away free ice cream but encouraged them to register to vote. Working with influencers from Love Island and other shows, and kind of presenting this information in a way that perhaps young people haven't actually seen before. So maybe there's an issue or there's a challenge of kind of making local councils cool, if that's even a
if that's ever possible,
if that's ever possible. But I think
do our best.
Approaching the challenge of engaging young people in a creative manner, I think, is going to be the biggest thing that you can do to kind of engage young people, because I think things like PowerPoints and spreadsheets and things like that, they're not the most interesting to young people. It's whether that they're on their phones, they're scrolling, they're on TikTok, they're on social media, and so you have to kind of speak in their language. And that's one thing that obviously we do quite well. but it's only because we involve young people in that process. So the whole campaign, the whole Give Next campaign, we had a steering group of about a dozen young people, half of which had never registered to vote before. So we had a range of people that were engaged politically, but also not. And we asked them, look, like this is the idea for the campaign. How should we go about it? And like fun fact, like the campaign was called Give Next, but originally it was called My Future, My Vote. And the young people that we got in the steering group said change the name. And so at the very start of our campaign, we had to like just change the whole campaign because they said that they didn't like it. And I think it's having that kind of acceptance that they know best when it comes to speaking to their own demographic of people. And yeah, I think one thing that I would say just to kind of take up new methods, try and do something in 2025 that you haven't done before, and let's see if it works, because I think maybe what's happened in the past or what's been done previously, it has maybe gone a bit stale. And in terms of engaging the new wave of, local councillors and MPs, they're going to be by nature of them being born in the past 20 years, they're going to be natives to social media. They're going to be natives to memes and, TikTok. So you kind of have to kind of speak in that language. And yeah, try and make it a bit more fun.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Can empathise with that, completely. And I think the additional challenge, possibly, Deborah, for those of us that work in the parish and town council sector, like you and I do, is that actually translating what it is that parish and town councils themselves are to anybody outside that world is pretty hard, and I'm sure you're going to tell us about that as well. And that's certainly the case nationally, even I might add, Andy, to other layers of local government, actually, or I know you do some other work with local authorities, but it's just another world governed by a different kind of type of law, and some of it quite antiquated, quite old-fashioned. But actually, we're lobbying for a lot of that to be changed, and so layered onto what Remy says about trying to retranslate that in a welcoming way to young people. And I think one of the questions so far is how do you, in the Q&A there is how do you define a young person? What age group are we talking about? So, I'm sure you guys will all have views on that. But it was well covered. I think we picked up and helped promote, I think, Remy, the My Life, My Say Give Next campaign ahead of the general election. What we try to do in our layer of local government is every year when there are parish elections, as Deborah knows, is promote younger people through our Make a Change campaign to stand, to increase the diversity of candidates, as well as there being more female, etc. candidates. So it's not seen. I think the mantra at one point, say 5 years ago, was male, pale and stale, which no doubt you've all heard before, but actually it's just increasing the breadth of any candidate standing for election. That's what we try to do, and part of that is engaging with young people. But I'm going to segue into Deborah in a second, but I think there is this whole thing, as you said, Andy, about what it is that local government entities do for young people in their area, where resource has been slashed. Through no fault of local authorities. It's just the decision of the government of the day. And it's just a trend which I can't immediately see being reversed, actually, despite the recent budget. So yeah, look, fantastic. Thanks, Remy. And anything you can do through the cafes you mentioned to engage with parish councils, which are almost all outside London, maybe engaging with our county associations, that would be fantastic, because I'm sure that they'd be hugely interested in that. Deborah, over to you. I'm going to introduce you as the clerk of Billericay Town Council to tell about what the fantastic work your council's doing with young people.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Deborah Tonkis. I'm the town clerk for Billericay, and I'm here to talk to you about my experience of running our youth council. Billericay Youth Town Council was set up in 1998. Town councillors wanted to get our young people involved with local democracy, shaping the provision of youth services, and hopefully sparking an interest in the community and volunteering. The Youth Town Council mirrors the full Town Council in that it has 20 seats, and any young person aged between 11 and 18 can be a member, providing they either live or attend school in Billericay. We have a constitution and standing orders, but the term of office is 2 years rather than the 4 for full council, and our municipal year starts in November. The Youth Council's main objectives, according to the Constitution, are to represent the young people of Billericay as a section of society on any issue of concern to them, and also to be involved in the organisation of events for young people. That's basically what they mainly do. These events have included music competitions, talent showcases, school discos, treasure hunts, designing a skate park and recreation equipment, fundraising for local charities, an urban games event, time capsules, making a recruitment video, helping to pack parcels at the local food bank, and a local radio panel discussion show. So we start by getting youth councillors comfortable working with each other, and that involves taking them on team building days. And we find this really helps the different age groups to interact. We've done high ropes, an off-road vehicle assault course, raft building, and mini golf. So these are all activities that they've done since I became clerk. We have an annual Christmas and summer end of term social event. Plus, we arrange visits to the Houses of Parliament that usually include a meet and greet with our local MP. Many of the town's fundraising organisations, such as the Rotary Clubs and Round Table, look to the Youth Town Councillors when they need volunteers. At our Christmas market, they can be found collecting donations or greeting children dressed as popular characters. They also act as track marshals at the Soapbox Derby, which gives them the best view of the races, and they scan electronic tickets at the fireworks display. The organisations show their appreciation by making a donation or offering grant funding. Youth Town Councillors also take a prominent role in Town Council commemorative events such as D-Day 80 and Remembrance Sunday. So how do we engage with our young people and get them to join the Youth Council? Well, a lot of our youth councillors are doing the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, and membership fulfills the volunteering element of that award. In the last few years, more sixth formers are joining as they want a better understanding of how local government works for their A-level studies, and membership also looks good on their personal statements for university applications. As mentioned earlier, we used to be the main go-to for those undertaking voluntary service for the Duke of Edinburgh Award, but we're now competing with a local park run, many high street charity shops and a community cinema, so we have to find other ways to attract new members. We visit local primary schools to speak about the Youth Council, and our current youth councillors do assemblies in their schools, and they also use social media to promote membership via online engagement. However, since COVID, we've had to approach the election process differently, as we realise that young people don't think and behave as they did 5 years ago. Social anxiety and fear of peer judgment are more intense for them now, so they're often wary about showing interest in what might be deemed an uncool activity. Few are prepared to put themselves forward for an actual election, so rather than holding a physical ballot in schools, which produces winners and losers, we just ask anybody interested in joining to come along to a meeting where all they have to do is introduce themselves with one sentence. On every agenda, there's an item for welcoming new members, and nobody ever gets turned away. Obviously, this isn't following a proper election process, but it does mean that we have a steady flow of young people coming along to find out about the Youth Town Council, because there is absolutely no pressure on them. If they like it, they return, and if they don't, there is no further obligation. At meetings, they discuss whatever is relevant or of interest to them. There are no restrictions on topics other than it should provide benefit to young people in Billericay. Often guests come along and speak about their organisations, and this gives the youth councillors an opportunity to become informed about local groups, and these groups get valuable feedback from young people. Following a recent visit by a children's mental health charity, the Youth Town Council organised a fundraising event for them last weekend, and also plan to get involved with their activities during Children's Mental Health Week next March. Another thing to be aware of is safeguarding. It's really important that your town or parish council has a child protection and safeguarding policy, a designated safeguarding person, and also a youth council working party whose members are DBS checked, undergo regular safeguarding training, and are committed to attending the youth council meetings. There must be at least 2 adults present at every meeting and event, and anybody that wants to attend a youth council from an outside organisation has to be pre-approved beforehand. Some youth councillors have additional needs and are especially vulnerable, and you might also be seen as a safe adult to confide in, so it's really important that the correct processes and procedures are in place and always followed. Another thing we focus on is getting the youth council to partner with community groups, and it was at one of these meetings that the current chair spoke to the neighbourhood policing team about how he occasionally felt unsafe when out and about in the town. Crime's not really a huge problem in Billericay, but a spate of phone and bicycle thefts in the high street had left some members feeling nervous about going out. So the policing team suggested that the youth councillors came up with a way of getting information out to young people about how they could keep themselves and their property safe. So that was the start of the Billericay Youth Safety Booklet, and a project that the Youth Town Councillors threw themselves into. They spent many meetings discussing what they thought young people should be aware of and planning how that information should be presented. In March this year, the Billericay Youth Safety Booklet and website were launched. Now, the booklet's been very well received, and the Youth Council are now working on the rollout of an Essex-wide template, which is going to be shared with other youth councils across the county. They've held community safety pop-up events with police officers, distributing the booklets and crime prevention items, and also organised a fire safety awareness open day at the local fire station. The Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for Essex and our local MP are aware of this project and have both pledged their support. I would say that one of the best parts of my job is working with the Youth Council, as they are great ambassadors for the town and their events are always fun. Any parish councils that contact me about starting a youth council are invited to come along and observe a meeting. They always comment afterwards on how engaged the young people are and what an asset they are to the community. Youth councillors have gone on to do politics degrees, be elected to the Essex Young Assembly and the UK Youth Parliament, speak in the House of Commons, work for an MP, and one became a member of the full town council between university and going to work for Theresa May. So to summarise my experience, I would say that youth councils are capable of doing so much good, both for their members and the community. I'd encourage any parish or town council to set one up, as it gives young people an insight into what it takes to achieve change and the practical skills as to how they can bring this change about. And I'm sure if anybody wants the information, copy of our constitution or standing orders, I'm perfectly happy to provide that after the event. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much, Deborah. I think we can all take away a huge amount from that today. An absolute inspiration. I knew it was the right thing to invite you and Billericay Town Council along today. That's clear. And hopefully, Andy, more evidence that town and parish councils are able and willing, where resource permits and where they've got brilliant clerks like Deborah, to engage with young people. So that's hopefully food for thought and possible joint future working with the NYA. From now on, really. But look, it's time now that the main contributions have been finished. Sorry, for the speakers to take some rounds of questions from the Q&A box, which I've been monitoring while you've all been speaking. And please do, for any delegates that haven't yet put any questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, bottom centre right of your screen. Do so if you want to. Can I just encourage you to ask questions though in there and not make statements? We've had previous online event delegates where there isn't actually a question anywhere in a long screed of text, and actually what we're wanting is questions that we can ask the delegates, please. The speakers, please. So yeah, we'll try and get through as many of those as possible. I'll ask them in rounds, and we'll do that until about 1:10. So we've got some 5 extra minutes, I think, to do that. Yeah, that's to all speakers. So point taken. Thanks, Liv. Let's have a look and let's just see what the most upvoted questions are then. Okay, so I think there was one I did pick up, which was from an anonymous attendee, so that must be from a delegate, which was actually quite a good question, but variously applicable to the speakers. And this might be answered better later on, the questioner says, so apologies for jumping the gun, but what age groups are targeted in terms of youth? Now, you know, I guess that depends, doesn't it, on which stakeholder we're asking the question to. But in some, who are the age groups, Andy, that you work with, or NYA primarily works with?
Yeah, so I was going to say just what you said there. That question could get answered differently depending who you're speaking to. At the NYA, we now on our website and within the aims of youth, where we talk about the age range 11 to 18, and with young people with additional needs that may raise to 24. But you will have local authorities, largely we'll talk about 13 to 19 for youth working young people. The government's statutory duty and the guidance for that talks about 13 to 19 and up to 24 with additional needs. But we're pushing 11 to 18. That's what we talk about because we see that 11 to 13 as quite a transitional age group where some 11 to 13s may be more involved in play type activities, some may be more involved in youth work type activities. So we try to encompass that. So if that confuses you even more.
No, but I was right in a sense to try and sidestep you know, an exact definition, but that's really helpful. And of course, from NYA's perspective, entirely unsurprising because it depends on need and the target audience, doesn't it? Remy, who are the kind of age groups generically that My Life, My Say so far has engaged with?
That's a great question, and like Andy said, I think it can be answered in a number of different ways. But currently, our main demographic of young people is 18 to 24, and I think that's because when we're concerned principally about voting and voter turnout, those are the ages that currently are in that phase of like just voting for the first time or getting into the democratic process. But that is going to change next year and presents a big challenge for us as we're going to be part of the push to get the voting age lower to 16, as Labour has promised in their manifesto, which kind of presents a lot of issues because currently, if we're talking about campaigning on social media, events and stuff, having 18-year-olds is fine because they're legally adults, so you don't need certain safeguarding measures and stuff like that. But when we're now approaching to the 16, 17 age bracket, it presents a lot of issues now because you know, 16-year-olds are, you know, still in need of a lot of safeguarding and stuff like that. So we can't necessarily talk to them in the same way. So we have to kind of adapt our approaches. We will need to adapt our approaches. But also on the top end of that as well, we do include up to people up to 30 in that young age bracket as well. Because I think there are a lot of people that are still in their 20s that are still young and still kind of new to it, and we don't want to exclude them just because they've hit, you know, 25, 26. They're still young and they still want to get involved. So yeah, 18, 24, but that does mean 18 to 30 sometimes, but and could potentially mean 16 to 30 next year.
No, understood. We've had the same debate at this end. I mentioned the Star Council Awards. I'm going to be honest with you about what age the you know, threshold should be for a young councillor. And I think it was lowered to 30 this year from 40 last year, and so I think next year we're probably going to have 35. You know, so you know, but that's the demographic we're talking about, and you're saying, Remy, that My Life, My Say, you know, takes in university students, etc. So there's probably on the graph, Andy, a kind of like a middle, kind of like a median bar there of an age group that you're all engaging with, but it does, doesn't it? It demonstrates the breadth of services, youth services, and need and educational kind of factors as well. It's really quite a, you know, a complex thing. Deborah, you touched on various age groups, didn't you, in your piece? I mean, are there any kind of like, what's the average age of youth town councillors?
The Youth Town Council, they're 11 to 18-year-olds. And obviously we like it when they come to us in year 7 and they stay with us all the way for those 7 years, right until when they leave to go off to university. And that does happen most of the time.
No, that's interesting. And I didn't realise that. So it's effectively for the whole of secondary school, isn't it? That's the ideal quantum you're talking about there. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. And Charlie, going to ask you as well. what are the you know, the I don't know if there's like a rule for this, but what are the ages of through your role as peer reviewer for the MYA there of people on average that you've been engaging with, you know, the great work you've done so far?
So I'd say the majority is between I'd say like 11 and 14, but again, there's been a couple of times where it'd be 15 to 18, but like I said before, it's a struggle to engage that age range, as I think it was Remy who said before, that as the older you get, like you don't want to be involved in that in case it's just not, it's not seen as cool, it's not seen as that kind of thing. So again, it's mainly that 14 to 11. It's really hard to engage that 15 to 18 age range.
Yeah, no, completely. We at this end have encountered that. And one thing we've learned since COVID, when we resurrected the Young Councillor of the Year category and the Star Council Awards, was that it's really hard to get nominations for that category. That's the first thing, especially from female young councillors. They're predominantly male, even within a small kind of like cohort of people coming forward. Whether that's reflected more generally, Deborah, across the sector in terms of like young councillors coming forward tend to be predominantly male. I don't know, and I know we're not just talking about young councillors, so we're talking about young people. But my guess would be, Andy, that that's probably indicative of also you know, broader social trends as well. You know, just a lack of willingness to come forward, which is so why it's so fantastic that Charlie's here today, demonstrating that, you know, where proper engagement happens, and as with Billericay Town Council, that can be nurtured and cultivated into the medium term. That's fantastic. Going to look for a second question I can ideally ask all of you. I'm just reading the one from Gilly Rogers at the moment, which is interesting. And again, Gilly's point is quite a good one, which is that actually within the town and parish council sector, you've got, some of you might know this already, there's a huge range, even within our level of local government, of populations and sizes of kind of communities, which is like from 150. You might have a small kind of like parish area in Leicestershire, all the way to Northampton Town Council, which has 120,000 population, biggest in the sector. So huge kind of spectrum, and therefore their resources, the amount of council tax they can raise to do stuff, to do projects in the community is limited. And so on that basis, what Gilly is asking is, she says she likes the My Life My Say Democracy Cafe. I did say to you, Remy, that would be of interest to some attendees today. But what would you? I'll direct this question to you first, Remy. What would you suggest for next steps for smaller parish councils, which may not have Billericay's kind of resource and assets, to get those kinds of you know, kind of activities off the ground? Maybe engage with My Life My Say first about organising one in the village or in a place not too far from it.
Yeah, for sure. We're always open to any sort of collaboration. If you want to have us come to your local parish, and then we can, you know, set up an event there. So yeah, the best way is to get in touch. You have I'm sure you have my email or someone's email from My Life My Say, and we'll get back to you. But I think yeah, it's kind of having that sort of initial contact with young people in your area as well. Whether you're talking to schools, sixth forms, if the sixth forms have because they do a politics A level, so that's a group that we often target, is that if sixth form and colleges have a politics A level, speaking to the college and saying, look, this could be a good extracurricular thing that can enhance the learning on the course. If there are any sort of groups already that exist that maybe exist outside of the council but could be incorporated. So like, I know there are sometimes local political groups or even online groups where people talk about things, and kind of just having that legitimized in within the council, that could be great as well. And yeah, I think as well, I don't know if this is a thing already, but just ensuring that your parish council has a presence online, has a social media account. There's a social media officer that people can recognize. So, you know, it should be the case that every young person in your area knows who the parish councillors are. You know what I mean? You need to have that visibility for them to be brought into the fold. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, basics like a website is what we've for years now encouraged all parishes to parish councils to have, even if it's a web page on another community organisation's website or something like that, to have contact details, names of councillors, and contact details for the council. But also then if that's grown, Remy, to promote youth kind of engagement activities, which the council might be doing. So that sounds as though it might be a runner for Wicken, I guess, which might be the parish council. I don't know. And if you're happy, Remy, we'll include your email address, or we'll include contact details for My Life My Say in the post-event mailing, which will go out, I believe, by the end of Monday. And yeah, so over to you next, Andy. Do you have any generic sort of tips for Julie on how maybe smaller parish councils can do simple, perhaps low-cost initiatives to engage with young people in their area?
Yeah, I think Gaz, whatever resources you get, something we haven't talked about is time, and that it takes quite a bit of time, because I think there's something around picking up. Charlie picked up on feeding back to young people, and I think that's critically important. And so I think if there's a building up of a reputation, I don't know if reputation is the right word, but a reputation of that we act on what young people say, that breaks down those kind of barriers, and that it might not be a popular answer, but that takes time. So I think it's about looking at those small wins and being able to celebrate them. I think I like what Remy says about social media. If you can promote that in a way that's relevant to young people, and maybe accessing through schools some young people to get involved, to actually have young people led social media, shouldn't probably cost that much.
That's a great idea, yeah. And again, is probably music to the ears of some clerks here, or councils from smaller parish councils, which don't have tons of resource, but still want to do engage with young people in their patch. Anything to add to that, Deborah? I mean, I think Julie's saying that her council doesn't have the resources that perhaps Billericay does, but yours is clearly an exemplar council here. Any tips for any smaller councils that you've given to smaller councils in Essex that could be applied elsewhere?
It is difficult, because if you look about attracting the members, getting members.
Well, I think this is more the side, this question that seems to be more in terms of engaging with young people just generally, younger residents in council area, as opposed to getting them onto the youth council.
Possibly a lot of the more rural areas, they don't have, we've got 2 senior schools in Billericay and a 3rd private school. So we have a ready pool of people that would, be prepared to join. And in villages and that, I think a lot of the young people travel outside, don't they, to go to their senior schools. So you've got to get the people that live in that area interested. And I think that's more difficult.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think probably adds to the kind of time aspects of this, which
it does, yes, yeah.
Because for you guys, even as a large town council, you've got other services and assets to manage, and lots of other stuff going on, haven't you? So this is one, if critical, but it's just one of many kind of bits of work that your council's doing. Okay, no, that's great. And Charlie, any final tips from you in terms of what you think, if you were a young person in a smaller community, maybe a rural, like a village, or an outlying urban area, what you'd think younger kids, younger people in that area might value in terms of engagement from a parish council?
So first off, again, making that local politics known, because again, me, for example, is I went to an event and I didn't even know that one of the people at the event was the mayor. I didn't even know who my local politicians were. I didn't know anything like that. I had no idea. So I think making those people more aware to students and young people in the area, and as well, like Andy said, is if you've come to a group of young people for information, and they've given you something to act on, giving feedback, even if that feedback is telling us that we're a bit unrealistic and that it's not going to be happening, at least we can see that you've heard that and you've attempted to make a change. It just builds that trust more, and it means that they're more likely to listen to what you've got to say, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. No, thanks very much indeed, Charlie. So it's great to have you on the event today. Is to kind of like reality check a lot of what certainly I'm saying, but then also make sure that from a parish council perspective, any resource that's being allocated towards engaging with young people is being done in the right way, linking to what Andy and Deborah and Remy have said. I'm trying to avoid asking questions which are parish council specific and only to our sector, but there are some good questions here, and not just to do either with trying to encourage younger people to stand on for election on parish councils. So there's one here which says in a mid-sized parish council we have an average councillor age of circa 70, and the clerk concerned, I think, finds it challenging to persuade councillors to take young people seriously, as she finds them to be quite dismissive of younger people's views and opinions. Over the past 4 years, this delegate asks or says she's lost 3 young councillors for the same reason. So in other words, pretty much as you were implying, Charlie, not feeling listened to. This is, I think, the most upvoted question. I've got to be honest. So thanks to whoever posted this. Do you have any suggestions on how this clerk or councillor might successfully introduce young councillors and have them respected? So seems to initially point to, doesn't it, not feeling listened to, and then also the possible belief that even if they became a young parish councillor, they wouldn't feel listened to if they were on the council either. I am going to ask that question to Deborah first because she is a clerk and has experience of this, but I will roll it out to all 3 other speakers. Deborah, what's your initial steer to the questioner here, please?
It's a really good question, actually, and just thinking about it, we have had young town councillors whereby they've been in their sort of late 20s, early 30s, and I find it's not that they're not listened to. As you said before, we do have a rather antiquated and old-fashioned way that we have to do things in this sector, and it's the time at which things take. They end up getting very frustrated because they'll put forward a project, and obviously because it has to go through various committees and meetings and be approved, and they get fed up, and very often they lose because they just don't have the patience to see a project through, not realizing quite how long it takes.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's certainly it's where this kind of bleeds into other issues in the sector, isn't it? And actually those slowing, you can't get things done as quickly as you might like to. And of course, young people want to, don't they? They want to see differences. If they've got a budget, I'm guessing, on the youth town council, they want to see the difference that's making, in the community.
Well, everything's immediate in their lives, isn't it? With social media and the way they interact with the world, it's all, I want it, I'll get that information now, I'll do this now. And unfortunately, we don't quite work like that.
Understood. I think that social media isn't. I think you probably admit this, Remy, isn't a perfect entity. But in terms of looking at tools that young people use to try to communicate and engage with local institutions, etc., and each other, social media seems to be it for now. It may not be always the case, but certainly seems to be it, for now. So yeah, just trying to make the most of that. Yeah, looking at you, Andy, for this one. I mean, you've clearly picked up on other projects that other large or town councils have engaged in, like you mentioned Shrewsbury, etc. I realise you might not have had as much engagement as perhaps Deborah will have done with trying to get young councillors on stream in our particular eddy of local government, but it is something we've noticed. I mentioned the Star Council Awards, young councillors category is always the hardest to get nominees for. Any tips? How could councils generally engage more and get more coming on stream?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm just reading it. I think it's a really interesting question around that sort of interaction between the young councillors and other councillors. I think there's something around. I mean, in terms of the question about getting them involved, is my answer is always going to be youth workers, and getting youth workers involved in that community, to who can get on alongside with young people and understand and hear that voice. So to provide that kind of this is, you know, how we can take this forward, and like Charlie says, manage some expectation. I think in terms of answering the question asked by anonymous attendee, I think there's something around managing the expectations of young people and understanding the expectations of young people, but also the expectations of others. Otherwise, it becomes quite tokenistic. So having a full wraparound program and project to it, you know, kind of training for those young people. These are some of the things that you might experience. How will you deal with it? How will you expect us to deal with it? And I think, I'm being honest as well, I think there's something around the challenge to those other councillors as well. To if 3 councillors have been lost, I think that's well, that's terrible. So I think there's something around the challenge there to them as well.
No, completely. And one thing we have, you know, picked up in the past here is, you know, longer standing councillors, many of whom do a fantastic job. But occasionally we do hear that, you know, that there are established and set ways of doing things on certain councils. Don't always hear this, but have heard it over the years at this end. And you know, not wanting to change that. So the culture of a council, you know, and that's not to say that there are some fantastic councils out there, but perhaps if a council hasn't even considered how it engages with young people in an area, or if, which may be no fault of its own, or if young people, as Deborah said before, often move out of the town, if it's a small community, go off to university, maybe don't come back if there aren't any jobs there, whatever, or housing's too expensive, something else we've picked up on, then it's the culture can't be changed. But then, you know, when someone does come along and move back into the area, like Deborah said in Billericay happened, and then later became a town councillor, well, how do you cope with that? So it is difficult, isn't it? From what seems to be the middle of the Venn diagram here is young people feeling listened to enough to want to become councillors in that place, you know, or perhaps even parish councillors in another place, even if they do move to another area, you know, so they're not put off the idea. Remy.
I think we have to think about how to provide value to these young people. I think that's the best way to ensure that like they stay within the council and stay engaged. Is that if we're providing value to them, something that we do at My Life My Say, is we try our best to kind of educate them, but also give them interesting sessions. And like, so we have one-to-one mentoring sessions. So that could be something that you guys can introduce in your parish council, is that like provide every young councillor a mentor within the council, so then that you kind of have that bridge built between the generations. Because I think ultimately what could probably contribute to this kind of resistance to kind of embrace change and embrace young people is that you only ever some people only ever encounter young people when it comes to certain topics or certain scenarios, which doesn't really help them embrace each other as like on a personal level. So maybe if you know there was more like mentorship, but from the older to the young, there could be more understanding of where they're coming from, and then want to nurture that talent, nurture that next generation of coming through, rather than like be resistant to it. And I think it's also instilling within the young people that this is part of a journey. This is not the be all and end all. This is the first step to whether it's a career or whether it's, you know, something that you're working towards as, you know, in your area, your community, and say, look, like you may be a young councillor today, but in 10 years' time, you won't be a young councillor anymore. You will just be a councillor, or you might be an MP, or you might be a local business person, and this might be all part of your journey. So whether it's kind of helping them upskill, helping them improve their CV, whether it's university applications, all these things kind of are potentially options that the councillors can provide to these young people to make sure that it's not just seen as a 2 hours of my week sort of tick box. It's actually something that they're getting something from.
Yeah, exactly. It does have to be two-way, doesn't it? They have to be, and actually, you've hit it nail on the head there. In the same way that I think Deborah mentioned Duke of Edinburgh, and a kind of accreditation, etc. If there's definitely something in it for some payback for young people to engage in that, whether it's credits towards Duke of Edinburgh or something. No doubt some of the schemes you've picked up and promoted, Andy, in the past in your long career. They're going to engage, and there's more chance of buy-in, isn't there? I think the other thing that I would feedback is that especially those people that youngsters that don't really know much about how local government works. That's one thing. Very very often, for example, you'll have noticed this over the years, Deborah, as well, that very often people think in a parish council area it's the parish council that empties the bins, whatever. And just kind of does that kind of thing. The roles of different levels of local government, people, Andy, they don't often understand, do they? And I think because they're busy and they often move areas, so the chances of young people, knowing that, for example, Remy, in the way you described, when a lot of this stuff perhaps isn't directly relevant to them, is probably minimal. Which segues into the question to Charlie. Actually, Charlie. This council concerned apparently lost 3 young councillors, and some of these councillors didn't feel respected. But how is being listened to enough to secure the buy-in and respect of young people? You think enough to keep them on a council, or do you think there has to be more than that in the way that Andy's described?
So I was going to say that I don't know how to secure the respect of other councillors or something like that. But what I would say is how to introduce young councillors is like I said before, to make them more aware of councillors and other other figures in local politics, and have it from a young age. This is going to sound irrelevant, but I'll link it back at the end. Is when I was speaking to someone about building the bridge between young people and the police, and having the police be seen, have the young people see the police from younger. Yeah, when you're younger, see the police more in a positive light, and then when you're older, you'll still have that in the back of your mind. You could do the same with councillors and local politicians. If, let's say, school fairs, you could have local politicians go and see young people at their school fairs, and that would definitely help from a younger age be like, okay, there is a role there, and this person does ABC in my community, and I know who they are. And again, I think that would help not only introduce, it would just kind of like set up the possibility of councillors being there. But again, like I said, for respect, I don't know how you'd gain the respect of a councillor. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, no, I think it's difficult, and maybe Deborah, I'll ask one final question in a minute. We've got 7 minutes left, but basically, to me, and I think it links. It's cultural, isn't it, Deborah? Some of this is governed by what parish councils can and can't do in the law, and what what powers they have, and therefore what budgets they have. Because they raise council tax, and so most of what unless they're getting partnership funding in the same way you described, Andy, to deliver specific youth projects, which, because they're not youth authorities, they're not in law, they're not necessarily tasked with statutory duties like that, are they? In the same way that principal authorities, local authorities are. So it's almost an add-on to the legal stuff, that the duties that parish councils have to kind of like deliver. But those legal duties are very old anyway, whether it's like managing an allotment, whatever it might be, bus shelters, kind of crucial. But actually, a lot of this law is at least 50 years old, and it's out of date. And the law isn't young either. So that's the kind of culture that Deborah mentioned, and I'm mentioning as well, that that is operating in the background of how our sector operates. So I think it's got to be cultural, but we need to make these changes now, so that we aren't, young people in parish areas aren't being turned off from the idea of becoming parish councillors, wherever that may be. The final question I'm going to ask very quickly is a snapshot question, and I know who's asked this. This has come from Mark Williams, who is the town clerk at Falmouth Town Council in Cornwall, hugely respected town clerk, and he says here, we're a university town. Some first years are covered by our youth provision. I think there is a university, in Falmouth. And I think Dawn French at one point was the chancellor there, I think, or vice chancellor. How do others engage with the 19 to 25-year-old group? So you mentioned, Remy, that you did at My Life My Say. How did you engage with that age group?
So we have existing relationships with a couple of universities here in London. So Greenwich University, our founder is from Greenwich University, and we have 3 interns that are interning with us here on I think on a 12-week scheme. So it's quite long as well. So they, as part of their course, and some courses have a built-in year in industry or placement thing. So we offered spaces on our team as part of that. So they are doing their degree with us partly. We also have two interns this year from LSE as well. So we just kind of have spoken to universities, some of whom are a team of alumni from, which helps build a relationship because we have that kind of avenue to the university. But just kind of getting them on board as well. And one of the LSE interns actually finished his internship and then joined us again as on another contract. So kind of after he's graduated, but he's here now, George. He's great as well. So it's kind of giving them that taste of what it's like to work within the sector, within politics, within charity, and then kind of seeing if they like it, and often they do. So yeah,
fantastic. That's really good. And Deborah, just briefly next, you mentioned 11 to 18 was kind of age catchment roughly of the town council there. Do you have, apart from those people that have come back and become a town councillor in Billericay, any engagement with the 19 to 25-year-old group?
To be perfectly honest, no, we don't. It seems to be we've got that young group, and then as everybody says, you've got your town councillors that are significantly older. It's not for want of trying, but they're just a group that they're busy with starting their careers, or they're away studying, and so they don't really want to engage with local democracy. But one thing we do, we make sure that our youth town councillors know about the government, the central government, which is why we take them to Westminster. Then we've got Essex County Council as the next level. So they've been to a citizenship ceremony there and they've met people at Essex County Council. And then you've got the Borough Council. So they come to meetings and they're aware of our town councillors as well. So we'd like to give them an understanding of all those different layers. So hopefully, perhaps one of them might be for them at some point in the future.
That's fantastic. So actually, yeah, and it's difficult for Billericay because it's not a university town, is it? In the same way that I think Mark is implying Falmouth is, and very, very few town council areas are actually, university towns. There are some, but not all. So I think Mark was asking a wider question, but you've already answered that. That's brilliant. You make sure that in terms of democracy, that age group and up to 18 know what's going on and who to engage with politically. Andy, any experience here, any tips on how to engage with that particular age group based on the different age groups you mentioned you did engage with?
Yeah, I mean, some of my background, pre-voluntary sector experience, youth work, we engaged with over 18s many years ago, though. Yeah, I think similar to just what everybody else is saying, I think if the university town, it might be around engaging the university as well, and looking at kind of things that might be an incentive for them to get involved, what courses they're doing, how that might help them with their career, and other young people to know in university as well, how it will help them in life, basically, what finding things like that, maybe some consultation, engagement, finding out from young people.
Yeah, and that's really good. We have heard of young people while they're at university in their hometown or home parish area staying on as parish councillors. But the tricky thing there is they've got to juggle their studies with getting back home enough to attend parish council meetings, so they're not booted off and not in a disincentive kind of way. Charlie, any final comment from you in terms of how you think local councils could engage with that slightly older age group of 19 to 25? Is it something you do, or you know many people in that age group?
So I have, so again, I've not, I know people within that age group, but I wouldn't say they were very involved because where I come from, not a lot of people went to university or got involved like that. So I I can't tell you how I would, but I'd also make sure that you make sure that there's a large proportion of people there who didn't go to university, didn't stay in education, and their voice isn't really going to be heard, which I don't know how on earth you'd engaged with that group of people, but just making sure that you know that there's a proportion of people there that are not being heard, kind of thing, and they're not being involved in politics. They're probably they're not going to vote, they're not going to do anything like that because they were never taught, they never learned, and they're not accessing that provision now that they've left school or college or whatever, and they just have no idea.
So maybe in the same, excellent, thanks. So maybe just to link up that point with Remy and Deborah's about just making sure that parish councils are doing everything they can, using social media, Remy, and other and democracy cafes, that kind of thing, to promote that maybe to people who haven't gone to university and are as aware as possible of the relevance to them and their lives of politics, but also how they can make their view known and respected and listened to. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And that you'll be delighted to know ends around the questions. I'm a minute over, but I just wanted to say a huge thanks to all of you speakers and delegates for coming, but mainly the speakers here who are, as you know, Andy, Charlie, Remy and Deborah for their valuable and fantastic contributions today. To delegates, I ask, please do fill out the feedback form as soon as you kind of leave Zoom, since the session ends in 1 or 2 minutes. It'll only take a minute, but we do value, really value your feedback so that we can help improve these events in future. Post-event mailing, which will go out probably on Monday, I'm imagining, will include the chat and any presentations you saw today. I'll drop speakers a line afterwards, but if speakers want to include any links, Town Council, My Life, My Say, or NYA, or presentations, whatever, we can happily include links to those for delegates to access. So if you can send those to me today, it'd be brilliant. And now would like to again say thanks to its partners, i.e. CCLA, be it Clear and Blashier Illuminations for helping make today happen. And please don't, this is the last online event this year. We always try to squeeze one in before we disappear off for Christmas. But we are launching next week our full suite of online events, our conference in London in June, and our study visit in May. Also worth linking back to what I think has been mentioned by Deborah and Andy. We took our study visit, which is also being launched next week. We took that to Yate in Bristol. Apparently Banksy's from around there. In May of this year, and the theme there was, guess what, youth services. That was a fantastic visit. So we do try to theme some of our in-person stuff around this theme as well, but I would encourage delegates to have a look at that. I think the theme for next year will be climate change and sustainability, but again, that will feature young people, I'm sure, as well. So have a look at the link at the bottom of that slide there. Again, 3 minutes late, that's my fault. Huge thanks to everyone, including speakers. Have a fantastic Christmas and take care and goodbye.